One on a very smooth Monday evening. How's everyone doing? It's the Teddy Bear, and welcome to Night Traxx Radio. And today's artist spotlight, Grammy Award winning keyboardist, producer, composer, and a wizard behind the keyboards. Lord have mercy, Mr. Greg Karukas with his new hit album, Serenata. My brother, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a minute. Matter of fact, the last time I interviewed you, you had just released Soul Secrets, and that's been a minute.
Yeah, I don't crank them out like a factory, that's for sure. I take my
Yeah.
time.
Well, that's a blessing because every album that you put out is completely different and it's exceptional. And I must, one of the things I wanted to congratulate you and just really heap a lot of praise on you is that not only have you been a consistent wizard on the keyboards, is that you have managed to bridge the gap between contemporary jazz and jazz standards. And that's a really daunting task to do in today's industry. And you've done a magnificent job being able to do that.
Well, thank you. And I my tastes run everywhere from R&B to classic jazz to new age to world music. And fortunately, I've been able to be involved in projects over the decades, in all of those styles, and I've written songs in all of those styles as well. And really, that kind of was my goal when I was, about 16 or 17. I really wanted to be a composer. That was my main focus. Didn't need to be known as, Mr. Chops who could play a million notes,
Right.
but I wanted to play the right notes and also write great melodies. And that's really everything gets down to melody, really, when you think about it. And, you know, there's so many great inspirations, from everybody from Herbie Hancock to Stevie Wonder to, oh, geez, I'm trying to think of, well, my friend David Lons, a great New Age pianist who basically kind of invented New Age piano back in the 80s. Uh, he's got a really great melodic touch, and his songs are not boring like most people would like to hang that cliche on New Age piano. And
Right.
so those are kind of some of the inspirations that I've had. Of course, Miles Davis, for the really deep textural melodic freedom and those kinds of things.
Absolutely. I mean, it definitely resonates in all of your music. One of the things that I've also admired about you is that when we speak, you have a very low key, very relaxed aura about you. But when you're on stage, it's a completely different person. Can you kind of give us a little bit more insight on what it's like to actually get out on the stage and perform in front of people, just let loose and just bring everyone in?
Well, the funny thing about that is I get a lot of great comments from people that say I seem so happy when I play. And I can't control what I look like,
Right.
but deep down inside I am very happy because it's the ultimate thing to be able to play my own original songs and have people, come from whatever city I'm in, come to hear me. But it reminds me how when I first started playing, I was in a jazz fusion band, all original jazz fusion band in Washington, D.C., called East Coast Offering with a great saxophone player named Tim Ironman. And I was playing a stack of three keyboards, and there was no guitar. It was bass, drums, keyboards, and sax. And I was so into it that I was like playing the music with my eyes closed the whole show.
Right.
And so the manager of the band, a few times after a set, we'd be playing a club or or maybe an outdoor concert or something, he'd say, Greg, just once, open your eyes and look at the audience. And so, to come from there where I was just so, it was just in my head and I knew the music backwards and forwards, but I was just really into it, to now come to many, many years later, um, I just, I can't help it. It's just like I look out in the audience and I see happy people and I feel happy.
Was it?
What more can I say?
Well, we love your music. I'm a huge admirer of your music. And this new album, Serenata, incredible. 15 tracks of beautifully played music, and the reviews have been outstanding. And I wanted to ask you, during the creative process and the finished product, how do you feel about the overall album?
Well, this was completely different for me. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to do a solo piano album. It's something that was very daunting over the years to think, could I really do a whole project that was solo piano? Because on a few of my CDs, there's one solo piece. And in my concerts, there's usually one solo piece that I've done for many years now, Sound of Emotion, which is also a vocal tune uh, on the Sound of Emotion CD, but I do this reprise where I play it on solo. So I've done that a lot. And when I do shows with Peter White, a lot of times he gives me a little solo spot, and I do that one song. But the genesis of doing a whole album really came out of being home during COVID and also getting reacquainted with some of these Brazilian songs that I had played when I was touring and recording with Dori Caymmi and also Sergio Mendes, who I was playing with Sergio in the late 80s. And I met Dori Caymmi because Dori was also sort of Sergio's guest to come up and do his album. Sergio produced his first U.S. album, and anyway, so I was playing with Dori, and I would record every show on my little cassette or my little mini disc recorder. And so a couple of years ago, I found this box of cassettes, and one of them was marked Dori at Le Cafe and had a star on it. So I said, oh, maybe I should check this out. So I go to get my old cassette deck off the shelf, which I hadn't
Okay.
played in probably 15 years, and it didn't work because the belt had dried out. So I go on Craigslist and I look and I find a used cassette deck that looked pretty good for $35. And I brought it home, and sure enough, it worked. And so I put the cassette in, and it was one of our great nights. It was really just magical. This club called Le Cafe that we used to play at, it only held 60 people, but it was always packed um, with just very attentive people. And Dori's show, it's not like Brazilian music where you think carnival and a lot of dancing. There are certainly some up-tempo grooves, but his music is very textural and melodic. And he's just this baritone singer, plays nylon guitar. And it was a five-piece band. And I was on keyboards. I was mostly the orchestral role, where I was playing a lot of synthesizers, string parts, and woodwind parts, and stuff like that. And so anyway, I'm listening to this cassette and I'm going, wow, this is very cool. And so I sat down and I tried to remember a lot of these songs on piano because I wasn't playing the melodies back then. I was playing the string and orchestra parts. So that turned into a couple evenings of just recollecting these songs. And it was so much fun and so inspiring that I just said, let me learn a few more of these songs. And that snowballed. And then that turned into maybe I could put together a whole project of solo piano. And then I really sat down and worked on it for a good month of just practicing and getting my piano chops together. And the recording went very quickly. I only did 2 or 3 takes of each song. And then, I had just had to decide, okay, now what do I do? Um, People don't really know me for solo piano. It's not jazz. It's not new age. And it's not world music. It's somewhere in between all of here. And I just sort of said, okay, whatever. I'm just going to put it out. And I ended up doing some promotion with uh, new age people, new age internet radio, and then some jazz promotion with jazz printed promotion and stuff like that, just to get it exposed. And so, yeah, got some very nice reviews, and I get really great comments from people, and it's great to actually offer that at my shows as something different, because I do a little spot in the middle of my very high energy, fully, a 5 piece band show. I'll just do an 8 or 10 minute spot of me playing solo piano and talking about the CD. So it's just another thing to have.
It's a wonderful feeling when you have an opportunity to really get a better insight on what the artist is thinking during that time in the process of making their music. What comes first? Is it the melody? Is it the lyrics? And there's always a story behind each song. And you have crafted that in such a masterful way with this new album. It's incredible. But I want to step back to Soul Secrets. You and Rick Braun have a certain chemistry working together that is that's undeniable. And I thought for sure, I was hoping, I said, is he going to be on this album? Because I guess I'm kind of, I'm envious of it, because you guys have such a great chemistry together.
Yeah, Rick has been a guest on a few of my CDs, and I've toured quite a bit with Rick and played on his CD and done stuff with R&R, Rick and Richard. But just as a musician and a guy who plays melodies, Rick is just, one of the best. And of course, his show is super high energy, and it's a lot of fun to play with Rick as well. And it's kind of weird, because there was actually a time when I remember he first came out and we first met, and he was saying he had his second, I think his second CD just come out, and he was saying, yeah, when I first put out my CD, nobody on smooth jazz radio wanted to hear trumpet. It was like
Wow.
they weren't accepting trumpet back in those days.
Right.
And it's crazy how now things have opened up, and that was a fairly narrow minded view, and now things have opened up, and of course we don't really have such a number of smooth jazz commercial radio stations, but now we have much more freedom on every internet station, including yours, to play everything, and people get a much more varied sonic you know offering. But
Wow.
anyway, yeah,
Wow.
and it's always been fun. During COVID, Rick hosted his Rick's Cafe from his living room,
Right.
and that was another great thing that really brought the music to people in their living rooms as well. And that was a weekly thing, and I must have done it probably four times. So that was a lot of fun to do as well.
I love seeing that when you have that kind of collaboration and also working relationship where you feed off of one another. It's that vibe. It's not something that you can just put into a bottle and say, let's just let it out and do it. It comes naturally. It comes from a very organic place. And that's the vibe I get from this new album. Is very polished, but at the same time, it's raw. And I love that quality about the new album.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, because that's exactly what I was going for with both the writing of the songs and also the recording of the songs. Most of the melodies and piano parts are first or second takes, and I kept those. I did spend a lot of time on the orchestrations and the tracks, building the arrangements, but always with that in mind. And then when I would have the guys like Rick or Vincent Ingala come in, I would just sort of play the track for them and always hit record at the very start to get their first impressions of how it was going. And a lot of that stuff is the best stuff, so I keep all of that. That's something I've learned over many, many years of producing and recording. And, it's not like those songs were necessarily recorded live with everybody, but everybody's session, if it was an overdub or the rhythm section, we knew what the song was, but we also knew that we had a lot of freedom.
And that's a key word: freedom. Freedom. Being able to improvise is one of the cornerstone of jazz. That kind of freedom to improvise. I wanted to go back a little bit to the 80s. I remember in the 80s and the late 70s, there were a lot of jazz clubs. I remember we used to have concerts by the sea, the Playboy Jazz Festival, things of that nature. And we've seen a lot of those facilities have just disappeared. So now you have an extended or over amount of traveling where you have to travel basically outside of the United States to play. And I wanted to ask you, you've had an opportunity to travel and play extensively. What is the difference between playing here in the States and playing outside of the United States?
Well, it's very different, and every country is a little bit different, but in general, um, they're very familiar with the music. And if I play, people come up to me with 6, 10 of my CDs. Just I brought
Wow.
them all to autograph them all. And people come with my first LP, the kind of collector's item, the
Right.
12-inch of the Night Owl, my first album, which came
Wow.
out in 1987. And even stuff before that I did, people have collected. But it happens like that, but it's a little tough. Um, the venues are not giant, but then, for instance, if we go and play Jakarta at Java Jazz Festival, we're part of a festival where people pay one ticket and they can meander and go from one venue to the other at this big complex.
Wow. Okay.
And so a lot of people have never heard of me or us. Like I've gone and we've done shows with Michael Paulo and Peter White and Rick Braun and Melissa Manchester and just many, many people. And they may have heard a little bit about us. And so they get exposed to new stuff and they become fans. And so that's very cool too. And actually in Jakarta, the ticket price is very low. It's like $20 or $25 for the whole day. So we get a lot of young people, and it's over usually a 3 or 4 day period.
Okay.
And so that's a whole cool thing. Now you go to Japan, and we'll play the Cotton Club or the Blue Note, and those tickets are very expensive.
Yeah.
And yet, there are some people that will come to every show because they've waited a year or 2 years or 3 years to see us. And that's pretty amazing too. So, there's that whole cross section. And then I think back to one of my first European tours was with Alphonse Mouzon, the drummer who has been known for his jazz work with Weather Report and McCoy Tyner and 11th House with Larry Coryell. And so we went over. It was Richard Elliott on sax and myself on keyboards and Jay Delaney on bass with Alphonse. And we had a tour that was about 6 weeks, all through Germany. And it was basically a new city every night for 10
Wow.
nights in a row, and then a night off, and then another 8 nights. And almost everyone was a club. And they were music clubs. They were not jazz clubs. They were clubs that had every style, but they were packed. And those people mostly knew Alphonse from his notoriety with the fusion groups, with Weather Report and 11th House and Miles Davis. And they didn't quite know what to expect, but they were there. And so that's a whole different crowd where they really knew their history, and they would show up with, McCoy Tyner records and Weather Report. The first Weather Report record was Alphonse playing on that. So, that's pretty historical.
Right. I've always said that for whatever reason, here in the States, we've become somewhat very spoiled and we take things for granted. And I've had a pleasure, along with yourself, to sit up here and to interview so many great, phenomenal artists like yourself. And they just rave about the love and adulation and respect that they receive when they go to Japan or when they go to Paris and they play. The love affair for jazz music is incredible because they still have record stores out there and they come up with their albums with the liner notes. They know the songs, they know the melodies, and they really just really, they take you in and they treat you like a king when you perform there.
Well, I'm not going to argue with that, but there's been a cycle that always comes and goes with that. In fact, I mean, when Miles Davis first went to Paris, he thought, "Oh my God, I could live here," and
Right.
he almost, he did stay there for quite a while. And a number of jazz musicians who found it really hard to get work in the early '60s because rock and roll came in and the Beatles came in. They became expats and they went to Europe and they continued to live and work there. And it's not like I'm thinking of moving, but
Okay.
it's
Okay.
it has been sort of a cycle of that does
Right.
happen. And I think it's always different. And I do feel for so many artists that are trying to get established. There's not that many venues, and
Right.
even myself, there's not like a ton of venues. I appreciate whether it's 50 people or 5,000 people. I appreciate it, and whatever gigs I travel for, we really kind of do the work when we're getting on the plane. That's what we get paid for is,
Right.
you know, getting to the airport and all that, schlepping and getting to the gig. And then when the people are there that are so appreciative, that makes it all worth it. And
Without question. Without
yeah,
question. Do you think the way music is set up now, do you think streaming has helped or it's become a hindrance as far as being able to really generate a profit from your music?
well, that's a good question. And when you say profit and generate, if you separate that, you get great exposure with YouTube and Spotify.
Right.
There's nothing like it, and there never was anything like it. So it is a, a worldwide exposure that if people happen upon you, or if somebody recommends you, or if you're part of an algorithm that includes you in a playlist, I've discovered new artists and some really great piano players by just being on Spotify. So
Right.
it's very cool for that aspect. As far as being profitable, the answer is flatly no, it is not profitable. Um, but you have to weigh what you really need to do in order to survive. And
Right.
that's why young musicians, I tell them, write your own songs because your own songs are the ones that will be eventually, hopefully, profitable. If you're just doing covers of other people's songs, um, the publishing exposure or the monetization of that, uh, you don't get any of that.
Right.
But having said that, there's people that have made a great living by doing a cover song, but doing a unique version of it on YouTube. And if it goes viral, Then there's some royalties for that, and there's also sound exchange, which is paid to the featured artist. And it gets a little technical, but somehow when you combine all of that, um, I guess from my point of view, having been, having hundreds of songs and hundreds of recordings out there, it does pay a little bit now that we have the internet, just always available.
Right, right.
So I'm generally thankful, but I feel for young people that, young artists that are coming up and trying to distinguish themselves and trying to get exposure.
It can be very challenging, and I found that out because I was doing radio for almost 13 years, and I had great artists on my show, like yourself, repeatedly. And it got to a point I was getting frustrated because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm having these wonderful artists on the show, great projects, great albums, and very few people would turn out. And I had a conversation with one of my mentors, and he explained to me, he said, look, radio was changing big time. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the way radio used to be 20, 30 years ago is not the same anymore. And so now I've noticed now since we changed the format and we started doing the video interviews, the feedback has been incredible. I can sit up here and do an interview with a great artist like yourself, do a 15, 20-minute interview. In that time, in that 20-minute span, I can have anywhere between 2,000 to 4,000 people watching the interview and go out and purchase that artist's album. So I've seen I've seen the difference. I have clearly seen the difference. That's why I said I got to get Greg on the show. The album is incredible, and family, be sure to go get the album. It is available as we speak. Make sure you go to his official website. That's at www.karukas, that's KARUKS.com. You can go there, get all the latest updates, and also purchase the new album. You say, well, Teddy Bear, I would love to see Greg play live. Hey, your wish is my command. On May the 27th through the 28th, he's going to be performing at the San Diego Hammond, Oregon, at the Jazz Lounge. That's in San Diego, California. That's at the Hammond, Oregon, at the Jazz Lounge. That's at 6818 El Cajon Boulevard. That's in San Diego, California. You can purchase your tickets. Make sure that you go see this fantastic artist perform live. I need a request from you. I need the new album. I need an autograph like you sent me the last time.
Yeah, and this is the other whole thing is I always bring my CDs to the shows, and I sign a lot. And that through my website, karukas.com, I just got a couple orders today. That's the only other place you can get them autographed by me.
Okay.
And that helps us personally. That's one of the offsets of we've lost a lot of record stores.
Yeah.
It's mostly Amazon now. But when we do go and play, we meet people and they do want to buy the CDs because it's a little more personal and we get to sign them. So that helps pay for the travel a little bit, sometimes.
Right. And
but yeah, so that the San Diego thing, that's the 28th Sunday.
Okay.
That's going to be really cool. And that's completely different little stretch for me playing Hammond organ soul jazz.
Okay.
And that's sort of my next branching out, which I've been doing working on hard for a few years now, and it's a lot of fun. And I also have my own original piano show coming up at Spaghettini in Seal Beach on Sunday, June 4th, right after that.
Okay.
And that's always fun to do that.
Man. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and joining us again. We greatly appreciate it. And remember, family, again, the new album, Serenata, is available as we speak. Make sure you purchase it. The album is fantastic. 15 tracks of beautiful music, and also get all the latest updates, constant information. We have an opportunity to go see Greg play live. Brother, thank you so much for joining us. You know this is your home. Whatever you need, please do not hesitate to let the teddy bear know.
Thank you so much. I hope to see you next time down your way.
Absolutely. The one and only, the legendary Mr. Greg Karukas here on Night Tracks Radio. Thank you, Freddie, for tuning in and allowing the teddy bear help you to tune out all the negativity. I seen the need, here to fulfill the need. Bring real music back to the airwaves. Again, be sure to stop by Greg's official website. That's at www.karukas.com. You can actually purchase a CD there, an autographed CD. Yes, Lord. Be sure to catch up with him. That's at May 27th through the 28th. He'll be in San Diego, California at the Hammond, Oregon Summit at the Jazz Lounge. That's at 6818 El Cajon Boulevard, San Diego, California, zip code 92115. Lord have mercy. Again, get the new album, Serenata. Hey, and if you don't have Soul Secrets, you definitely need to go get that. That album is incredible also. And to get all the latest updates, let your fingers do the walking. Be sure to follow us on Facebook. That's at Facebook at LOTL Radio, The Zone. Also, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's at Night Tracks with 2 X's, double X. Yes, Lord. Night Tracks Radio, Music, Podcast. That's our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe there. And also, you can catch up with us on Instagram. That's at Instagram, LOTL, The Comfort Zone Radio. And last but certainly not least, we're ticking. We're doing a lot of talking, but we're bringing music therapy back to the airwaves. We're on TikTok. That's at Night Tracks Radio. Without you, there's no me. I humbly thank you. And as in always, keep it soulful here on Night Tracks Radio. Lord.